Welcome back to the class in International Business Communication. We are nearing the end of the course now. So, today we will talk about ethics. We've discussed the applications, we've discussed various things. I hope I've been able to give you enough leads, enough keywords that you can use to find out more about communication. Today we will talk about what constitutes ethical communication. And again, we will start with a boring piece, which is theories. Like everything else, people have worked on theorizing international business communication as well. So, we will begin with the theories. I do not have any revision. I will revise the whole course with you in the last lecture, and we will tie up all loose ends. But for now, we will straight away jump into this topic of the theories of communication ethics. The first one is the deontological approaches. According to this approach, ethical choices arise from personal allegiance to principles that are relatively unchanging and ongoing. Now, this means that the fundamental decision made about one member of a group ought to be universalizable. What this really means is that we are pretty much stuck on what we believe to be right. We don't, people who follow this approach feel that once they have made up their mind, once they have figured out what is right, what is not, then that opinion doesn't change, and that opinion applies, or that notion of what constitutes as ethical or unethical behavior applies across the board to everybody else in that particular context. And that is what is meant by the deontological approach. The teleological approaches are, it is a philosophical study of how goals and outcomes can shape human behavior. People are proactive rather than reactive. That is the other thing that is believed. Certain phenomena can be explained not by means of prior causes, but by ends of aims, intentions, or purposes, which means that phenomena can be explained in terms of the reason for the not by how the process has happened. They can be explained by what eventually comes out. What ultimately happened determines whether you consider what happened as ethical or not. The process is immaterial. So, what really happens here is people who believe in the teleological approach, or who follow the teleological approach, really say that the people are proactive, they take decisions, they move on, but it's not so important to focus on the rightness of how things happened. It is more important to focus on whether the consequence, whether the end result comes across as, or seems right, or fits into our notion of ethical or not. The consequentialist ethic is what ultimately happened determines whether you consider it ethical or not, as opposed to the process involved. Utilitarianism is another aspect of the teleological approach, where what the ultimate result of the process is going to be used for, and whether that use can be considered ethical or not, or useful or not, is when we decide whether something is ethical or not. And you'll say, how does this apply to the notion of communication? Anything we say or do here depends, the effect of what we say or do determines whether what we said or did is ethical or not, and that is how this applies. The intention doesn't really matter. According to this approach, the intention does not really matter, and the ultimate result, how people felt, how the ultimate output was, really determines whether what we said was ethical or not. Okay. Egalitarian approach evaluates communication using the criterion of equality. Have the conditions produced by the communication enhanced or hindered equal treatment for the individuals who are affected by it? That is the egalitarian approach. So it essentially deals with the equality of the interactants involved. Have we treated everybody right? Have we said whatever whatever we said or is whatever we have said, treating the interactants involved equally or not? Have the conditions or has the result that has been produced at the end of whatever we have said, is it equally applicable to everybody or not? Is it affecting everybody equally or not? That is the egalitarian approach. Egoistic ethic is the outcome of the communication event good or bad? There's an extra is here which I am going to remove, I am sorry, but then this is what happens in a real class. We, as hard as we try, we do make mistakes like anyone else, and there's an extra is that I am going to remove from here. Okay. So, according to this approach, or according to the egoistic ethic, we say that whether it's not about quality being applicable for everybody, it is not about equality for everyone, it is not about the notion of goodness for everyone, it is more about the outcome being good or positive or helpful or gratifying for the person who is doing the evaluation of the communicative event. Do I perceive whatever is happening as good or not? And that is the egoistic ethic. Now, how do you curb? I mean, people call it ethical. People say, I am qualified, I am in a position, I am in a based on my experience, training, whatever, I am in a position to judge whether whatever is being said is ethical or not. But ultimately, this can be curbed by using the veil of ignorance, which means that we dissociate ourselves and we say, okay, let me remove myself, let me assume that I am not a part of this, I am not getting affected by it, and how are the others getting affected by it? What happens in the egoistic ethic is that if I am feeling good about it, everybody else around me is also feeling good about it. So everybody, we are all equals, and I am a representative of the group that this is being addressed to. And if I feel comfortable, everybody else feels comfortable. Now, that may or may not be true. And just to become more objective, what we do here is we use the veil of ignorance, which means let's assume that I am not a part of this whole situation. How would the others in this situation feel? Do they feel that whatever is happening is right or not? If yes, then we are on the right track. Okay. Specific theories of communication ethics that apply specifically to communication events. Now, what I said was actually these theories apply to behavior in general. Now, we will talk about the theories that apply specifically to ethical communication. The first one here is virtue ethics. Virtue is a way people create and preserve good things, or a faculty of conferring many great benefits. Again, this is based on Aristotelian concepts. Justice is it shouldn't be virut, it should be virtue. Again, another spelling mistake, and I apologize for that. Okay, justice is the virtue through which everybody enjoys his own possessions in accordance with the law. Its opposite is injustice, through which men enjoy the possessions of others in defiance of the law. So, according to virtue ethics, or as per virtue ethics, we do good things, we preserve good things, we do things that can be beneficial to others, or we do things that eventually end up being helpful to others, and we enjoy the fruits only of our own labor. We don't enjoy the fruits of other people's labor. We don't do things, we don't say things that we enjoy the possessions that we have earned by virtue of our own hard work. That is the concept of justice, and we only claim to enjoy the fruits of our labor. One application of this is intellectual property. we talk about that. We'll touch upon it just a little bit towards the end of this lecture. But excuse me, that is the principle of justice in action. I have created this knowledge. I am going to only claim this portion as my own knowledge creation. For example, what I am doing in this series of lectures is I am giving you a lot of different opinions, a lot of different suggestions by different people, and I give you the references, which means that I have not created this knowledge. I have not even created these words. These words have come from the authors that have been mentioned, but what I say outside of the slides comes from here. So what I am saying outside of these slides is what I have interpreted, but what is on the slides is somebody else's words, somebody else's knowledge creation, and I am not claiming it as my own. I have no right to. Okay, so that is one thing. You will do the same thing in your work environments also. I have heard, I don't know how far this is true, but I have heard that many times, due to paucity of time, people end up copying. Whenever they are asked to submit something, they just copy and paste things from the internet, and but that is not right, and I am just showing you how different people view things as right or wrong. So okay, principle of the golden mean is when people are faced with ethical choices in a situation, the most ethical action is often the one at a midpoint between the two extremes. Excuse me. So what happens is that in a situation where two people are saying things that could be opposite to each other, at that point, what do you think is right? Which situation or what is really appropriate? For example, one person says, again I am going to use these approaches that I have talked about, the deontological approach, where we say that taking other people's things is lying is wrong. Okay, it is not right to lie. That is the deontological approach. So across the board, that applies to everybody in every situation. If you lie, you are being unethical. Then we move on to the teleological approach excuse me, which is the use issue. Okay, at that point you say that okay, it is bad to lie, but if assuming somebody is has a weak heart and some close family member has just died, and this person may have another heart attack and die, and the doctor says if this person asks you about the person who's dead, please say that the person is sick, but don't tell him that this person has died. So where do you draw the line? Another tenuous assertion is the concept of transparency versus confidentiality. Where do you draw the line? So we say everything should be transparent in an organization. At the same time, it is important to protect information that can be damaging to the organization. One has to protect information that that can put the employees at risk. So where do you draw the line? So that is where these approaches conflict. So at that point, we use the principle of the golden mean. We come to a midpoint, we give exceptions, and we say, okay, I am going to share this much information. I will not share everything with you. I will not say I don't have any other information, but I will not share that information because I feel it is risky to do so. I feel it might incriminate me. I feel it might put me be damaging for me, all of those things. I have more information. I am not going to tell you what it is. I will not share the quality, the contents of that information also. And this is one example of the golden mean. Okay. Taoist ethics, another theory of communication ethics. According to this, life is an organic whole with its own dynamic ecology, and no individual person or thing exists except in relation to others. Thus, no action can be taken egoistically. We see more conflicting things. At this point, I want you to start thinking about the implications of whatever I am saying in international business. How would people in different cultures believe things? What would people in a low context culture believe more? What would people in a high context culture believe more? Where do we draw the line? If you are a person from a high context culture who believes one set of ways or who has one method of assessing what is right and what is wrong moves to another culture, at that point you're faced with deciding what is right and what is wrong. How do you make that distinction? Where do you draw the line? So that's why I'm showing you all of these different opinions where that people have, and these notions of right and wrong, good and bad, have a very, very significant bearing on how people treat their co-workers, on the international business interactions, how you are perceived, how people perceive their own selves, and how you are perceived in relation to them, and how well you match up with their notions of what is right and what is wrong. Okay, so according to Taoist ethics, again, I'm sorry, this should be a sub part. All right, this should be like this. So according to Taoist ethics, communicative decisions are guided by harmony in the environment. What we decide to say is guided by the main goal here is harmony in the environment. Now, which context would this apply to, high or low? You have to decide that. We've talked about this. So please discuss amongst yourselves whether this would apply to high context or low context, and then you decide whether this will help you figure out what will be considered right in a particular context and what will be considered wrong. Okay, the other one here is a person must always take into account the ways in which individual action may be counterproductive when considered holistically. What kind of culture are we talking about? What kind of communication climate are we talking about? What will happen in this situation? Is it individualistic or is it collectivist philosophy that we are talking about here? So you have to discuss that. And this is why, we talked about values, beliefs and ideals. I hope this is making some sense in light of what we've discussed in the context of intercultural communication and even international communication. You may be coming from a different region, but you are interacting with migrants, you are interacting with people who've been living there, you are interacting with people whose value systems are in transition. All of that stuff is going on. Okay. Yin and yang. Yin is the passive and receptive elements of living. Yang is the active and forceful elements of living. They exist interdependently and dialectically. That is what Taoist ethics say, that we cannot separate ourselves from the holistic picture. We cannot separate ourselves from the context, and that is what we have been talking about in this class. You have to decide which culture values what more, and then that will help you determine the context of the person who's receiving your messages. That will help you design your messages across borders more efficiently. Once you know where they are coming from, what their notion of right and wrong, good and bad, appropriate and inappropriate is, that will help you decide how to frame your message in a way that it appeals to their sense of rightness, it appeals to their sense of appropriateness, it appeals to their sense of what is really required, and they will in turn determine how competent you are perceived as a communicator. Okay. Dialogic ethics. I-thou relationship versus I-it relationship. In and through communication, creating the perceptual reality that the target of our conversation is a human being versus an object or a thing to be used. How do we, again, I'll just clarify this. We have talked about this a little bit earlier. What happens is, when we are talking to people, depending on the words we use, the tone we use, the manner in which we talk to them, the pauses, the interplay of communication rules, we establish these relationships. I-thou relationship is, I am treating you like a human being. You are as much a participant in this relationship as I am. You are you come with your own intentions, your own emotions, and all of that. Your communication is wrapped in that. Your interpretation of what I am saying to you is based on your own emotions and feelings and perceptions about me. And I am expecting the same kind of interaction from you, and that is how our relationship is formed. Our relationship is a result of our treatment of each other as human beings with aspects that neither of us can control about each other, with aspects of our relationship that neither of us can control even independently of each other. Okay, that is this I thou relationship. Now I it relationship is where I treat you as an object, you are a resource, I am asking you, I am paying you the money, you are paying me, you are giving me the service. I am giving you the money, you are teaching me. I am giving you the money, you are treating me. If you are a doctor, so you are a service provider, you are a resource, you are a, I objectify you. So I have an upper hand if I am the one, the I in this relationship and you are the it, then I have a higher position, higher status in the relationship. I decide what the communication rules are going to be. I decide how they will be played out. I decide what the climate of this communication or this interaction is going to be, and all of that stuff. Okay. Psychologism is an all authentic experience that occurs in the inner self and can be measured or described by the concept of psychology, and this is what was rejected by Martin Buber. Buber said that I don't exist on my own. I either exist in relation to the objects in my environment or in relation to the other people in the environment, but I don't exist on my own. Okay. Condition of being versus seeming. Being is when persons respond to each other in terms of the demands of the immediate situation. Seeming is when we objectify the other person, we attempt to manipulate each other and each other's reactions. Again, and you'll say, okay, well, ethical behavior is that we treat each other as human beings. Once in a while, we need to objectify each other in order to get things done. And it's not, I'm not saying what is right or what is wrong, but it becomes necessary. We also become objectified. It's important to objectify our own selves. And if we get into that discussion, this will just sort of take on a life of its own. So I'm not going to go there. But then again, where we draw the line between being and seeming, where are our intentions very, very absolutely honest and sincere, and where do our intentions have a bearing on manipulation of another person's behavior. Natural unfolding of ideas. Ideas and communication evolve through the quality of communication versus imposition of ideas, which is propaganda and persuasion using the, I'm sorry about this, I think it's gone beyond the slide, using the relationship of interactants. Let me just reduce the size so you can see it, and you can say maybe not, maybe this will help. Yeah. Okay. So the natural unfolding of ideas is another concept here. Ideas and communication evolve through the quality of communication versus the imposition of ideas. I think I've mentioned it again on the next slide. Okay. And this means that again, this is based on Martin Buber's concept of I thou. I let ideas evolve naturally, which means that ideas and communication evolve through the quality of communication and the relationship of interactants, and this evolution is based on mutual respect. I treat you as a human being who's equal to me, and you treat me as an equal, and that's how these ideas evolve. This is natural unfolding of ideas. Imposition of ideas, on the other hand, would be propaganda and persuasion using the relationship of interactants. So what I'm really saying is that when we impose our ideas on others, we say, by virtue of this relationship, you have to believe in whatever I'm saying. By virtue of this relationship, you have to do what I'm saying. By virtue of this, because I have this relationship with you, you should be believing it. Because I'm saying something, you have to be believing it. So we sort of assert ourselves a lot more when we use propaganda and when we impose our ideas on somebody. And where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the line in this? Do we draw the line, do we always let ideas unfold, or do we sometimes need to put our foot down and say, you know what, this is where we need to stop, and you decide on the course of the communication. Inclusion is when people are engaged People engaged in inclusion maintain their own perspective while simultaneously imagining the experienced reality of the other communicators from their perspectives. So, what we do is that we maintain our own perspective. We also invite the experiences of, we simultaneously imagine the experienced reality of the other communicators from their perspectives. We put ourselves in the other person's shoes and we say, okay, I am thinking like this, what would the other person be thinking? What would the other person be imagining? What would the other person be understanding from this situation? Am I doing justice to both of these opinions or not? And that is the concept of inclusion. Again, that is part of dialogic communication. A lot of flow of messages is involved in taking these decisions about what is right and what is wrong and what is ethical and what is not ethical and what should and should not be said. Ethical guidelines for communication based on the dialogic theories of communication. The first one is authenticity, truthfulness. Are we being truthful? Are we saying what we are supposed to be saying? Are we saying things that we have decided to say? I'm sorry, being truthful means, am I saying the right thing? Is there a lie involved? Am I saying things that are not, that are inaccurate, that are incorrect, or am I saying things that are correct? So that is authenticity. Inclusion we just discussed. Confirmation, inclusion means we take the other person's perspective also into account before we open our mouths. Confirmation of each other's existence in and through dialogue. So when we say inclusion, yes, I'm considering your point of view, but when I say confirmation, I'm also accepting you as or acknowledging you as a thinking, feeling human being who has a personality of his or her own and whose behavior I cannot predict fully. Presentness. Dialogue partners demonstrate willingness to become fully involved with each other by taking time, avoiding distraction, being communicatively accessible, and risking attachment. One avoids being an onlooker who simply takes in what is presented, or an observer who analyzes. So, dialogue partners are people who are who become fully involved in each other, minimize distractions. They are present in the moment of the communication. They are there. They are fully there. We often encounter this. We usually switch off in meetings about things that don't concern us directly. We switch to selective listening. What communication, if we are an ethical or if we are ethical communicators, what we really need to do is be attentive, be alert, be responsive to the other person's existence, acknowledge the other person's existence, be responsive to the other person's existence. This is what presentness is talking about. Spirit of mutual equality. When we are engaged in communication with someone, do we engage in a monologue? Is it only about me, myself, I all the time, or are we taking the other person's perspective into account? Are we focusing on the other person's reality? Are we focusing on what the other person wants to say? Do both the interactants have an equal share, or do both the interactants participate equally in what is being said or not? That is the spirit of mutual equality. Supportive climate. Dialogue is more of a team effort than a transfer of psychologized meanings from one individual to another. This really focuses on the co-construction of meaning. We have discussed that when we talk to each other, we discover things, we build the communication, we build the climate, we build whatever is going on. The environment, we create a new context together. So it's not an exchange of ideas alone. It is also the creation of this context by the interactants, and that is the supportive climate. Not only do we contribute to the building of this new context, we also encourage the other party to contribute their share in the building of this environment. Okay. Interpersonal ethic. The applications of dialogic theory, where do we apply it in real lives? Interpersonal ethic is choices communicators have and are able to develop regarding attitudes towards each other as a result of interpersonal communication. Whatever enhances that which is uniquely human in participants is ethical. Whatever dehumanizes is unethical. According to the interpersonal ethic, this is again based on the I, thou and I, it perspectives of Martin Buber. What is really being said here is, as long as I treat the other person as a human being, as long as I enhance the humanness of the interaction, as long as I don't objectify the other people I'm interacting with, I'm being ethical. When I start objectifying people, when I start dehumanizing the interaction, when I start talking about profits and losses, when I start talking about what matters more to me than another person, when I start using people in and through communication, at that point the communication becomes unethical. Okay, the other one here is feminine ethic of care, and I'm going to do something here which will help you relate to this better. A little bit of formatting which I should have done earlier on. Okay, feminine ethic of care, according to this, there are researched differences where that indicate that women and men tend to solve problems differently. Women are usually associated with caring. Women care more. They have been known to be more caring towards people, towards situation, towards they have a more caring attitude towards the interpretation of situations, towards the manner in which, I mean, this attitude plays out in the manner in which they draft their communication, in which they draft what they say. And women are associated with care, relationships, holistic interpretation of situation that includes associated human emotions and feelings, whereas men are more object oriented. Now again, how does this play out in real life? We talk about professionalism and we say women are unprofessional. They are not unprofessional. They believe that anyone else I'm interacting with comes with his own set of emotions, and it is not right to dissociate those emotions from the object orientation. Those emotions, those feelings, those biases play a role in the manner in which people interact, in the manner in which people behave, and these things play out. And this is something that I've also heard at work. You know, you women just cry at the slightest of pretexts. I don't want to see tears. You start feeling bad. And women are built differently. Women are by anatomically we are programmed to acknowledge, accept, deal with emotions, express emotions more than men. So this is something that we can't dissociate. Men are more object oriented, and we say that the feminine ethic of care enhances the involvement or inclusion, imagining the real, and empathy in any communication. It should play a part. Again, according to this theory, it is important. I am not saying it should, it is important in deciding what is ethical or not. The caring is also an integral part of interpreting something as right or wrong. It has two aspects to it. One is engrossment, which is involvement, which includes inclusion, imagining the real, and empathy. Empathy is putting yourself in another person's shoes and imagining what they must be feeling. Motivational displacement is motivation is transferred to the cared for person, and the relationship between the person who is caring and the one who is cared for. So in addition to being the object oriented, our motivation, or if this is the ethic that we go by, then our motivation depends on the person being cared for or the person who we are empathizing with, and the relationship that this person who is being cared for has with the person who is caring for this person who is being cared for, and that ultimately determines what we feel as ethical or not. I know this sounds a lot in the air, and I had noted down an example. I can't retrieve it right now, but this really indicates why people in human resources are taught to be more. We have liaison officers who are trained specifically in assessing the needs, the emotional needs, the psychological needs, the social needs of people who are actually working in the office. We've designated it, we've compartmentalized these things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is right. In every communication there is a human element, and this ethic essentially emphasizes on that human element in communication, the feeling, the biased, the real component of any communication. Discourse ethics, we have communicative rationality, which is a consensus. According to this, this was proposed by Habermas in 1979. This is, according to this consensus, is a desirable social goal that can best be achieved by communicators who choose clear rules for guiding the fairness of deliberations. So, according to this, we choose rationally, we choose a set of rules, and we let, as long as the rules we have chosen are right, as long as the rules we have chosen are rational, we can achieve at a consensus in any discussion situation by following those rules. And it has to be a consensus, it can't be a majority decision. So, everybody has to agree that something is right or wrong, and or has to be done or does not have to be done. And as long as the rules are rational, nobody should have a reason to disagree. So, we are being ethical if we choose the rational, most rational set of rules here. Ideal speech situation is an encounter of ideal speech. According to this, an encounter of ideal speech has the following characteristics. The first one here is the cooperative search for truth, which results in a consensus or a mutually agreed upon interpretation about that truth. The second one here is force of the better argument, which transcends any kind of internal or external coercion. This is all a part of discourse ethics. I should not have a bullet here, so I am going to remove it right here. Okay. So, according to the communicative rationality, this is what the ideal speech situation should have. Force of the better argument transcends any kind of external or internal coercion. And how do we decide what is better? We see what is rational. All communicators have equal access to the discourse. As long as everybody in that team has equal access to the discourse, is an equal participant in what is being discussed, has equal understanding of how these rules were rationalized, and agrees to that rationalization, there should be no problem with getting a consensus. All communicators have equal opportunities to question assertions, introduce their own assertions, and express personal attitudes and wants. So, this is also based on the egalitarian principle of communication, where everybody has a say, everybody decides, everybody contributes, and once everybody has contributed and everybody has agreed on a mutually acceptable set of rational rules that are clear to everybody, then getting to a consensus is not bad. Those rules can be applied to different situations, but everybody has to be, the ideal has to be followed in order to ethically decide on a discussion situation. Okay. Principles for ethical rhetoric in a democratic society were proposed by Wallace in 1955. They have been mentioned in this book by Anderson and Ross in 2002. I have been referring to this book extensively. I will show you this book again. I have shown this to you. It is called Questions of Communication, A Practical Introduction to Theory. I have the third edition of the book. You may find a later edition. This is by Rob Anderson and Veronica Ross. Amazing book. This is a very good book on theoretical underpinnings of communicative events, and I've taken all this information from this book, especially the theoretical portions. Okay, according to the what Wallace proposed, the first point here is communicators in a democratic society should uphold a standard of knowledge. So we must know what we are talking about. If we say something, if we want somebody to listen, I should have a clear idea of what I'm saying. Communicators in a democratic society should exhibit a habit of justice. And what does justice mean? Fair and accurate presentation of facts, imposition versus encouragement to unfolding of ideas. So we need to decide, we need to present facts accurately, we need to encourage unfolding of ideas, we need to give people the freedom to make choices, we need to give people equal access. There has to be freedom for the equal treatment of the communication event to all the participants in the communication event, and at that point we can say that a sense of justice has been achieved in the communication event. Some more principles proposed by Wallace. Communicators in a democratic society should enact a habit of preferring public to private motivations, which means that, and again this is playing out here, right here, I'm telling you where I've got the information that I'm sharing with you from. I've given you the references. If I say I believe in something, I should be able to disclose why I believe in that, why I'm saying something to you in public. I should not need to hide it. I should not have reasons that cannot be explained to anyone. As long as my reasons for saying what I am saying are clear, can be shared with just about anybody, barring of course risky situations, my communication can be considered as ethical. Communicators in a democratic society should demonstrate a habit of respect for dissent, which means that I should be very, very comfortable with opposing points of view. It's not only my opinion, it is also the opinions that are contradicting what I am trying to say, and I should be okay with those opinions. Okay. Marketplace of ideas ethics. Ideas like commodities are, and again these were proposed by Hyman in 1981, 1991, Schauer in 1982, again discussed in this book by Anderson and Ross, published in 2002. And according to this set of ethics, ideas like commodities are differently attractive and influential to various publics, which means people believe different things about different ethics or different notions of ethics, and you as communication experts, people who've been listening to these different ideas, can help me and can help other communication teachers and can help each other figure out how and why different sets of ethics or different notions about ethics may be applicable to different set of situations, different cultures, different people. Why would people want to believe a specific set of deciding, or why would how would people differently decide what is ethical to them and in which situation? So, how would they be able to figure out what is ethical and why would they believe that? Once you get a sense of this, then you will have absolutely no problem deciding or using whatever you have learnt in any situation. And that's why I said this course is not prescriptive. I'm giving you the ideas. Now you have to, based on these ideas, develop a series of what constitutes ethical communication in different situations. So you can come up with a set, share it with me, and we'll put it up as an addendum to this course. I invite you to do that. Okay. Like a market economy, a marketplace of ideas gains strength or influence by encouraging maximum access to the market and by maintaining an adversarial or competitive system for testing ideas against each other. This is exactly what I just said, what Wallace had proposed. I shared with you what Wallace had proposed in 1955, and he said that you should not be hiding things that are opposing your point of view. Make your point of view as strong as possible. I am doing this because I have a reason to do this. Here is my reason. Come, I invite you to defend my reason. If you defend my reason, I will modify whatever I am saying. If you successfully defend your reason, I will modify what I am saying and come up with a better proposition. So please give me things that are not where you don't agree with what I am saying. Please give me those statements. Please tell me why you don't agree, and that will strengthen my position. Okay, so this marketplace of ideas ethics is applicable there, and this is very, very applicable to an international business situation, where once you know why people don't consider what you are saying or doing as ethical, you can modify things or you can explain your point of view in a much better manner. The enemy is known, right? Okay. Censoring of ideas is viewed as an impediment to the marketplace in its quest for truth. Our ultimate goal is to get to the truth. Our ultimate goal is to be fair to everyone. If we censor ideas, if we selectively share ideas, that can be an impediment to the to our quest for truth. Ethical guidelines for deciding whether secrecy or revelation is the most appropriate would be, they were proposed by Bock in 1983. One is the equality, the other one is partial individual control over the degree of secrecy or openness about personal matters. Again, Bock proposed these two guidelines. One set or one option was equality. Everybody should be treated equally. Now, everybody, all the interactants should have partial individual control over how secretive they want to be and how open they want to be. Again, I told you, we have these tenuous assertions. What should I disclose? What should I hide? Where should I be confidential? Where should I keep information confidential? Where should I let it all out? So, all these things, if you put all of this in one bag, whatever I am saying in one bag, it will become clearer to you why this topic is important for international business communication and what makes this topic, so complex. Okay, the applications of ethics in international business communication. This is perfect timing. They just showed me this label. They give me a signal when 15 minutes are remaining, so it will go really smoothly today. Okay, one of the applications is negotiations. Now, why do people lie in negotiations? Again, I have taken some bits and pieces from various situations, various applications of ethics. Negotiations are a big one. Marketing is another one. We had talked about lowball tactics, this and that. So, that is another one. I'll also share with you how people lie in or how deception, how people deceive others. How do we know that they are deceiving us? We will also talk a little bit about deception and unethical practices in written communication, and these are some of the applications. I am sure there are a lot more, but we just don't have time for all of it. So anyway, the first one is people may succumb to temptation, and again this is based on these two papers, one by Ten Brunsell and Dykman. The other paper is by Malhotra, which was published in 2004. I'll give you the references. The first one is, they believe that people lie in negotiations because they tend to succumb to temptations. Something you want more, so they succumb to temptations and they lie. Attraction to uncertainty. Maybe what I don't know is more attractive, so they lie in negotiations because they feel that if they lie, then they will get more out of the situation than they would have if they had not lied. If they lie about their position, if they lie about their bhatnas, if they lie about what they have, if they lie about their bottom line, maybe they'll get a little bit more than they would have if they had been honest. And you say, well, that's worldly wisdom. You need to be worldly wise, and maybe that's true, maybe that's not. I cannot say for sure, but these are some of the reasons. Enjoying the powerlessness of the other. That is another reason why people lie in negotiations. They like to see the other person feel powerless. They like to see the other person feel dependent on them, and that's why they lie. To avoid hurting the other side's feelings or to save face. Sometimes people lying can be for good purposes also, for good reasons also. They lie either to avoid hurting the other person, or they will lie to save their own face. When we say face, we are not talking about the skin, we are talking about public image. I hope you are now on the same page as me when I use these different terms. To defend yourself when you sense your opponent is being deceptive. If you see deception coming from the other side, you tend to lie because you don't want to give too much of yourself. To restore equality and justice when you feel wronged. That is another reason why you may lie. You feel wronged, you want to get back to somebody, at somebody, and you end up lying. to make a profit or avoid a loss. You want to get the maximum benefit out of the situation, so we tend to lie. Okay. Disclosing information in negotiations. When must you disclose information and when must you hide the information in negotiations or any business situation? When is disclosure a good idea? 1. The information is required by law. If law requires that you give out some information, then you have to give it. For example, in any business situation, I'll give you one example. If you hear about a threat to national security, it is your legal responsibility to inform the nearest police station or the nearest authority. So threats to national security can never be kept confidential. Threats to a person's safety, if somebody in your office says that I'm going to commit suicide, that cannot be kept confidential. That has to be conveyed to the HR head. If you are the HR head hearing this, you need to convey it to your superiors that so and so is so badly hurt, so and so is threatening to commit suicide. So it's a threat to a human life. At that point, you cannot be confidential. You may not share it on a public notice board. You should not share such information on a public notice board, but it cannot be staying only with you. You should inform, you have a responsibility to inform the people who can, 1, help this person, 2, people who can be affected in the organization by this. So at least your higher ups. Information that is in the public domain has to be shared. You can't say, okay, I've put it on a public website, but shh, don't tell anyone. It's confidential. Whatever I am saying in this is not confidential. Even if I wanted to keep it confidential, it will be available on YouTube. Everybody will have access to it. Information that could inspire reciprocation. Again, in negotiations, if you feel that some information can help you get same kind of information from another person, then it's a good idea to share that information. Potentially damaging facts and needs. Again, disclosure is a good idea. You share the information with the other party. When is disclosure not a good idea? If there is sensitive or privileged information, you have information that can be that is sensitive, that you have no right to share, information that is not yours to share, information that diminishes your power. If it's information that is not required by law to be disclosed, but it diminishes your power, then you shouldn't be sharing information. And information that may fluctuate, for example, the fuel prices these days, the prices of airline tickets, the stock prices, all of these things. So, you can definitely contextualize the information, but you can't give a definite response to anyone. Okay, deception. How do we know that people are lying, or what is deception? Deception is the ways in which people send messages designed to foster beliefs contrary to what the actor believes is the true state of affairs. It is manifested through impression management or self-presentation. So, we give the other person an impression that we something that is different from the actual truth, and we were just talking about ethical communication. This is unethical communication. Okay, psychological processes affecting deceptive behavior. How do we know that people are being deceptive? One is psychological arousal due to detection apprehension. We are scared that we may be detected, so there is psychological arousal, and that is something that you can see. Emotional reactions which arise from guilt or fear of detection. Again, you can see it. These are some of the things that play into deception, and they are visible. Cognitive load, the extra cognitive effort required to formulate the deceptive message. It can affect the framing of a deceptive message. It can also give you an idea of whether the message is deceptive or not. Behavioral control, which is the efforts to suppress telltale signs and to create a credible demeanor. Again, these are the psychological processes that affect deceptive behavior, and that can in turn be used to detect deceptive behavior. Okay, unethical practices in written communication and implications for intellectual property. The first one here is plagiarism. Plagiarism is the kidnapping of another's words. This is by Dr. Sutherland Smith, who's based in Australia. I read a paper by her which was published in 2009. So this is from there. Plagiarism is the act of taking, borrowing, stealing, misappropriating, passing off an object, work, computer images, choreography from a source, by an agent without adequate acknowledgement, with or without the intention to deceive. So this is something that people may engage in when they lie in written communication. Unethical practices in written communication, one is plagiarism. The copying is another one. You use someone else's work and not acknowledge the person. Cheating is fabrication of data, procedures, etc. You just fill in the gaps by making assumptions, but that is cheating. That's not right. Contract cheating is having someone else do your work for you. Again, different people have given their definitions. Patch writing is copying from a source text and then deleting some words, altering grammatical structures, or plugging in one-for-one synonym substitutes. And I would have shown you an example, we just don't have enough time for it, but I've given you the link. You can read the link and you can find some more information. So all these are different forms of unethical practices in written communication. Why do people resort to these things? Lack of proficiency in a language could be one. Perception that big words and complicated flowery language will leave a good impression about the author, about the person who's written that document. Nobody in business has time to pick up a dictionary and find out the meanings of words. Lack of expertise, lack of awareness, laziness, fear of failure, peer pressure, egotism and the drive for self-enhancement, and the pressure to perform. So some of the reasons why people may lie in written communication. Now, what are the consequences of unethical communication in general? One, if you are not communicating ethically, it could affect your credibility, it could affect your reputation. People will not believe you, people will not respect you, it could damage your reputation, it has professional implications, intellectual property, your promotion may be delayed, your people, and all these things are interrelated. You could have legal implications, you could be sued. Cost to funding agencies, if there's money involved in creating the information that you have created which has been cheated or fabricated or whatever. Cost to academia, especially if you're creating an academic document. Future knowledge creation and professional careers of people who use this copied or unethical written work in their own careers as a base. And there is cost to society depending on what you have said and why you said it, and if you are writing about some medicine, if you've not given all the information, then it could end up killing people. So stuff like that. So there is a cost involved. So these are the consequences of unethical communication. What you say can affect people's careers, it can affect people's lives, it can affect what society experiences, it can have you put behind bars, it can damage your credibility, can damage your reputation. Please don't do it. Do not do it. So as far as possible, tell people that you have information that you don't want to share, or that you're not authorized to share, or that you're not comfortable sharing, but do not lie as far as possible. Okay, now I would like you to discuss a few things before we end this whole series of lectures. We will have another lecture to wrap up everything we've done. Based on your understanding of the theoretical underpinnings dealt with earlier, discuss how the following impact the decision of interactants regarding what constitutes ethical communication. The first one is natural boundaries. Do national boundaries have anything to do with how meanings are interpreted as right or wrong, good or bad, etc.? Does culture play a role? Do communication rules play a role? Where do they decide? Where do they help you decide what is right, what is not? Just compare all these different theoretical underpinnings, match them, or compare them in light of whatever you have heard or read or studied about diverse or culturally different communication, and then see what fits in and why people believe things to be right or wrong. And also make a list of where people might get confused in ethical communication. I will add all these things. I will give you more ideas in the web course being developed along the same lines. I just don't have enough time to discuss everything here. But you discuss all this, you come up with your own list of these confusions, and then you will be able to figure out on your own what you want to consider as ethical communicative behavior, and what you will disregard, where you will draw the line between ethical and unethical communication. And then you can come up with your own strategies, and maybe you can teach others about what is right and what is wrong in communication. And in the next class, in the last lecture of this series, we will just wrap up everything we have done. So thank you.